Or you take Democrats now who are saying he's a threat to democracy, and he's had 2 assassination attempts. Both sides need to tone down the rhetoric.
So we're about to have a look at a conversation between Dr. Phil, Cenk Uygur, and Ana Kasparian, where Dr. Phil goes on their show in studio and basically clowns them directly to their face, and they don't even realize it, especially Cenk. I feel like Ana is a little bit more understanding of the situation rather as opposed to Cenk, but I want to set the stage in that directly after Donald Trump was nearly assassinated, Joe Biden came out and told the world, told the country that we need to tone down the rhetoric. And I took that as him speaking to everyone, Democrats and Republicans, especially the Democrats, because they're the ones that have been comparing Trump to Hitler and calling his supporters essentially Nazis, right? And that kind of rhetoric can lead a person to believe that taking out Hitler would be a good thing, and that could potentially have led to the assassination attempt on Donald Trump's life, where he was shot in the ear, right? And so without giving away too much more, I just wanted to set the stage. Let's go ahead and get this video started.
Here's where it gets super hard. You're 100% right about that. I wish literally the whole country would do that, right? And we even did a show here. We put families back together that were fighting about Republicans, and half the families Republican, half the families Democrat, et cetera. And they, because of Trump and everything else, they hate each other, and we bring them back together and remember their humanity and the bonds that they share, et cetera. But it does get hard. Here, I'll give you an example. So I'm atheist now, but I'm born Muslim, my family's Muslim, my background's Muslim. So Trump says, I want a total and complete shutdown on Muslims entering the country during the 2016 campaign, right? Put aside the travel ban he eventually did. I don't need to get into the policy of that, but he says that, right? And then his fans say, yes, we should ban all Muslims from the country. Now, how am I supposed to react to that? Am I supposed to say, well, I love you as a human being. Yeah, go ahead and ban me, right? Like I can't say that. They're forcing me into a fight. Do you see what I'm saying? So what does somebody do in a situation like that, where it gets real hard?
You know, I think obviously that is an extreme, unrealistic and sustainable position. And I think when politicians take extreme positions, they have to be called on it, right? They have to be called on it. And I think saying it is one thing, doing it is another. And the problem I have with either side using this heated rhetoric is there are people that are followers that will take that lead and behave accordingly. Like, for example, in 21 years, I have never said, if you've got a child and they're running into traffic, I've never even said you should suppress the behavior by just swatting them and saying, no, don't do that. Which I would never even say that. And half the country is spare the rod, spoil the child, and half of the country is you don't spank your children. And I can't say you wouldn't even spank their hand if they were getting ready to touch a hot stove. And I'll tell you why. Because there are enough mouth breathers out there in the country that would take what I said and say, well, Dr. Phil says it's okay to hit your kids. And they would abuse their children, taking what I said out of context, amplifying it, and using it as justification to abuse their children. Now you take someone like a leader who says something like you're talking about, you get these mouth breathers out there who all of a sudden they take that as license to aggress against Muslims. Or you take Democrats now who are saying he's a threat to democracy and he's had 2 assassination attempts. Both sides need to tone down the rhetoric.
And it's funny because right there, Dr. Phil was telling Cenk, or at least in my opinion, right to his face that, hey, nobody remembers what Donald Trump said. It's you, the mouthpiece for the mainstream media, this woke pundit who keeps echoing it. And the fact that you keep echoing it means that people might act accordingly to it, right? And at the same time, he brings up the more important, more valid rhetoric, which is that the left is calling Trump and his supporters Hitler and Nazis.
Because there are enough unstable people out there that will take that as license to advance an agenda that I think is dangerous. I think both sides keep amplifying the rhetoric and need to stop doing that.
So how do you suggest, so I totally hear what you're saying. How do you suggest people like us do our jobs, right? So like when we talk about what happened in 2020 and 2021, when we talk about the fake elector scheme, January 6th, I mean, that was an attempt to assault our democracy. And I think it's important to report the truth without unnecessary language to rile people up. But right now, I think one of the problems I'm having is that people are trying to argue that simply discussing the reality of what happened following the 2020 election is literally putting Donald Trump's life at risk. And I don't believe that to be true.
And I just want to answer that real quick before Dr. Phil weighs in. You know, Anna, how you can report that and do your job is to actually do your job and report everything, report things accurately. You can't call January 6th an attack on our democracy or whatever you just said without including the attack on the White House on 5/29 that forced Donald Trump to take cover in a bunker under the White House because they were setting fires to the church across the street and attacking Secret Service and Capitol Police, sending like 60 or 80 plus people to the hospital that night. You can't report on one and leave the other thing out. If you want to do your job, you have to be honest and report it all, right? You can't just say that Donald Trump used tear gas to clear a crowd so he could go and take a picture with a Bible the next day and that be the story of 5/29 when the reality is what happened that night was much, much worse and much more of an attack on democracy per your definition of it than what happened on January 6th, where, you know, less than 1,000 people, a few hundred people out of a crowd of 1 million actually fought with police and broke the laws that day, right? Not one fire was set. Most of the people that went into the Capitol were ushered in, stayed between the velvet ropes, waved their little flags, and then walked out, and then also went home before it was dark. Once again, just report the news accurately and don't be so one-sided, and then you can do your job even better and more thorough, and people will respect you and people will watch you from all walks of life. But I know you guys are here for Dr. Phil's answer, so let's go ahead and play that now.
Neither.
Yeah.
Oh, neither, but there is heated rhetoric that I think could contribute to these unhooked people out there.
Like calling Trump Hitler over and over again, stuff like that.
Yeah, then you get somebody that takes that and acts on it. That's not the responsibility of the Democratic Party. That's the responsibility of the person that picked up the rifle and got on the roof and took the shots. That's not the responsibility. But we, as broadcasters and political leaders, need to recognize, hey, people, that's why I say don't spank your children. I recognize there are those out there that will overreact to that. We have to be responsible. If I'm reporting a show about suicide, I never show how they did it. I never show the memorial services because there are responsible ways to report those things so you don't have a contagion effect with some teen who says, oh, I wish they'd have that kind of thing for me. And so there is a demonstrated contagion effect. So I refuse to show that. I won't show how it happened because would I be responsible for somebody killing themselves? No, but I am aware of the contagion effect, and so I have to be a responsible broadcaster.
Yeah, so another thing we around a good transition to media, and so
I think that was a good answer. He basically said that you got to be responsible because your rhetoric does affect the mouth breathers. I love how he uses that phrase, the mouth breathers. And I believe there's a lot more mouth breathers on the left than there are on the right, to be honest with you. But there's some on both sides. Let's be honest. Not you though, of course, not you. But I think that whole statement that Dr. Phil just made went completely over Cenk's head. I don't think he understands that one bit, and it's demonstrated by the fact that, you know, there's been a few weeks since this interview happened, maybe a month, I'm not sure exactly, that Cenk is still out there calling Donald Trump Hitler, and he's defending Biden. He's defending Kamala Harris. You know, he even defended Biden after he called all the Trump supporters garbage. He hasn't toned down the rhetoric from the left as a pundit, as a mouthpiece, as a journalist, one bit. And as a matter of fact, nobody has on the left. CNN, MSNBC, a lot of these folks are going even harder, reporting that Donald Trump is Hitler, that he wants his generals to be like Hitler's generals, and all this nonsense, right? Which is, you know, like hearsay. It's not even out of Trump's mouth, but they're going to run and report it because they feel like they have to do that. They have to vilify, I don't know, one of those two, Donald Trump, to the point that everybody is so scared of him, they have to fearmonger and make him this boogeyman so that everybody runs out there and votes for Kamala Harris because they're essentially voting for Donald Trump because he's so scary, right? Well, I want a scary president. I want somebody that is so scary on the world scale, like he was in his first 4 years, that Russia wasn't ballsy enough to go and attack Ukraine, which they did right as soon as Biden took over, basically essentially just, you know, like in May after Biden took over within the first year. I want a leader that's American first, America first, that is so scary on the world scale that all these other crazy leaders, Putin, Xi, all these folks, Iran, stay in check. You know what I mean? That they don't try anything crazy, exactly like what happened under the first 4 years of Donald Trump. And, you know, if you remember back just, you know, 4 to 8 years ago, everybody was refinancing their houses on lower interest rates, buying houses on super low interest rates. Groceries were affordable. People were stacking money in their bank accounts. You know, stock market was even doing pretty good if you're into that type of stuff, if you're able to, you know, afford stocks. And generally, the world was a safer place for everybody. And I like the concept of peace through prosperity. And the only way you can have that is by having a leader that everybody around the world respects and fears. And that's Donald Trump. That's not Kamala Harris. That is not Joe Biden. And look what the last 4 years delivered us. You know what I'm saying? Multiple wars. Taiwan is under threat from being taken over from China now. Just all the nonsense. Basically the opposite of what I just described of what we had under Trump. The election is just a few days away now at this point, and I want to encourage everybody to get out there and make sure they vote early if they can. Definitely vote if even if it's on voting day, election day. Make sure your voice is heard, because we need to, in my opinion, return back to an America First strong president, and that is Donald Trump. With that, I'll say that if you are an America First individual, you're in the right place. So make sure you show a little support, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, share this video. Come visit me also on Saturdays at 8 p.m. Eastern time. I go live for a couple hours. I'd love to have a chat with you guys. And if not, that's okay. Hopefully I'll see you guys in the next video.